Libya is a country with vast amounts of oil, a country that should be one of the most prominent, a country which is so valuable in resources, yet a country that still lives in fear. 1969 was the year Muammar Gaddafi took power in Libya. The 1972 world energy crisis and the quadrupling of the oil price were kicked off by his attacks on the international oil companies, who vainly had tried to stonewall his proposed changes. He also dabbled in Arab unification efforts with Egypt and Syria, and military invaded Chad, but soon tired of these ventures. Oil production financed Gaddafi's aid for international terrorist groups and supported his claim to leadership on the African continent. Libya became a focal point of terrorism. International Islamic extremists, communist insurgents, Irish nationalists, they were all welcome. He gave them camps, money, training, bank accounts, everything they needed to spread fear and havoc in the world. Virtually from the day he seized power, Muammar Gaddafi presented his country as a safe haven for international terrorism. Much as Fidel Castro had done a decade earlier, he set aside land for bases, instructors, bank accounts, weapons and explosives. Once he had consolidated power, he set out to become the Fidel Castro of the Mediterranean. Approaching Benghazi, Cyrenaic's capital, from the sea, the landmark of the twin-dome basilica and the enormous expansion of the harbor catch the eye. The harbor is stacked with shiny new oil equipment. Close up, however, the impression quickly changes to one of total abandonment. One walks ashore over badly laid, unfinished roads past heaps of garbage. The once outstandingly beautiful basilica and the splendid Grand Hotel on the seafront are vandalized, ransacked, and inhabited by squatters. New futuristic buildings serving no purpose have sprouted everywhere, but are hardly occupied and are already falling to pieces in unkept surroundings. Cyrenaicans have been totally kept down by government and post-poverty and the necessity to scrape a living. Gaddafi had favored Tripoli, his native part of the country, and punished Cyrenaica. Favoritism is an active lifestyle to Libya, meaning where Gaddafi goes, the money goes. Oil, money, greed, and wealth are all factors that fuel Gaddafi's decisions, making decisions based on his own priorities and forgetting about the country in which he leads. Within Libya, Gaddafi implemented an international policy on 4 basic elements. Alienation, intended to restrict individual freedoms and to consume Libyans with basic survival. Attrition of education, in order to limit the individual's ability to make reasoned decisions. Moral degradification, designated to make the public blind to the government's corruption, and spreading fear and terrorism throughout Libya. These policies have created inhumane and unbearable conditions in Libya, compelling many Libyans to leave the country in search of security and better life. As a result of random and premeditated arrests, Gaddafi's prisons were filled and other prisons were created to meet the need of an ever-increasing number of prisoners. Of all the prisons in Libya, the Abu Salim prison on the outskirts of Tripoli have become the most notorious. Abu Salim prison gained its notoriety following the massacre of 1,200 political prisoners on June 28, 1996. Many of those prisoners were held for several years prior to their executions. They were never charged with any political or criminal activities. In Denmark 2005, Gaddafi called for a boycott of Danish products after a controversial depiction of the Prophet Muhammad in the Danish press. The use of religion as a federating tool to go after Western countries is unsettling. Though Libya calls to unite for certain causes are often dismissed by the Muslim world. Gaddafi masterfully toys with Western nations, knowing very well that their appetite for Libyan natural resources will tame their call for greater freedom, democracy, and openness. Sanctioning 24 countries for the actions of Switzerland is very smart, in dividing strategy, as it is doubtful that countries have high stakes in Libya. The hope is that Gaddafi will one day leave power, leads many countries to keep a low profile and not shake the tree too hard in order to be in the starting blocks once the power transition happens. This is all wishful thinking. If we look at Cuba, for example, everyone has been waiting for the departure of Fidel Castro, who's very well alive, and so is his brother. Gaddafi is only 69 years old. His father is said to have lived till well over 90 years old when he died in 1985. It is unconscionable for the United States and any Western democracy to engage in trade relations with such a regime that has supported terrorism and violates the human rights of its own citizens. The United States must set an example for the rest of the world to follow. I call upon President Obama to take this opportunity to fulfill the promises he has made to the American people and to take a stand against the greed and corruption of the oil conglomerates. I call upon the President to put people over politics and refuse to do business with a regime that continues to embrace terrorists and violate the human rights of its own citizens. I believe that our demands are reasonable and that the vast majority of Americans support us in the beliefs that terrorist states must not be appeased or bargained with. Otherwise, there will not have been change. The bombing of Pan Am 103 in December of 1988 was a massacre killing all 259 people aboard, including 189 U.S. citizens and 11 on the ground, all which could not have occurred without Gaddafi's authorization. Yet he is still free. He let his intelligence officer take the blame for his actions and later paid the families of his victims. Is this the new trend of terrorism? Kill people, take lives, then write a check. How can people just forget, stand by, and let this man rule? Who gives him the authority to take lives away? Mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, gone in an instant. We are all aware of what happened. Terrorism was committed. But to the self-proclaimed King of Kings, he's above it all. The Pan Am bombing is just one notch in Gaddafi's belt. There are countless more stories of strange disappearances and killings ordered by Gaddafi. There have been people arrested with no trial and never heard from again. Gaddafi is a terrorist and a criminal. He commits crimes against humanity and dumps the blame anywhere but himself. Libya is a country that cannot fully thrive or function to its potential while he's in charge. And we should not stand by and wait around for someone to take action. We should go out and we should do it ourselves. Thank you.